Hola, hola, amigas. Welcome to another episode of Modern Latina in Midlife. Boy, do I have a treat for you today. I have Monica Lorraine joining me today to talk about astrology as it relates to a woman in midlife. She talks about the four midlife transitions that women go through from the ages of 37 to about 50, 51. So it is you, my dear. It is all of you, amigas, who are here today. This is the age group, and she couldn't have planned this any better. She truly did an amazing job taking us through the things that we go through in life. Let me tell you a little bit about Monica. Monica Lorraine is a soul empowered coach, astrologer, and human design business consultant. She is the creator of the soul mapping coaching method and the Business by Design blueprint. She specializes in helping women who are on a self discovery journey clarify their life direction, identify their purpose and soul gifts, break free from the unconscious patterns that are preventing them from creating the results they desire and deserve in their personal life or business. Monica is known for her ability to laser in on her clients' charts, identify the blind spots, and map out the shortest path to creating the desired outcomes they want. She does this through her private one on one sessions, online classes, and group coaching programs. Now, I answered the call from listening to Monica Lorraine in a podcast interview back in 2018. It was on the Let There Be Loose podcast with my dear friend Linda Garcia as the host. And she offered a generous complimentary clarity call at the time and to read your astrological chart, and I jumped on it, and it was truly life changing. It really set me up to really take intentional steps for working on the areas that needed attention at that particular time in my life, depending on what my chart said. And it was truly life changing, and it set me up in the right direction to be where I am at today. And that, in combination with her human design, which the human design portion helped me more so on in my business, it has truly been life changing. So I'm super excited to bring her on to the podcast. I've been wanting to do this from the time I first started thinking about creating this podcast. And I'm just so glad that she has agreed to be here to join us. And so without further ado, let's welcome Monica Lorraine.
Okay. Welcome, Monica Lorraine. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about doing this for a little while, and I was so excited when you invited me, especially because of the topic.
Yes.
Because, yeah, midlife, it's an interesting topic. And, before when people would say midlife, automatically I'm thinking like 50 and over, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't realizing that midlife is literally starting from, I would say, honestly, between 35 to 50. But
Correct.
things really start changing around age 37. At least that's what happened to me. So, yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited to dive into
Awesome.
this
Yes.
topic a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah. Definitely. Midlife. I know some people think midlife starts at 50. And it's like, no, no, no.
Nope.
Like it just really is different, but it's around 35 and it can go up to 60 really. And then, there's
Yeah.
other stuff happening at that point too. So but yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I do want to ask you if you will share with us a little bit about your background and how you ended up, you know, here.
Yeah, especially with astrology. So I do a few things, but today we're talking about my work with astrology and my clients. And I always joke, but I'm kind of joking and not really, that the reason I got into astrology in the first place is because my love life, it was
Mm.
just one disaster after another.
Mm, mhm.
And as I delved deeper into my astrology chart, I realized that I had a lot of karma around relationships. There was a lot of things that I was going to need to learn in this lifetime through my relationships. So oddly enough, at age 28, I would say, I was having something called a Saturn return. And basically what that means is my whole life was just upended. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is what is wrong with me? What's going on with me that I keep attracting these same types of relationships? The men look different, the guys look different, but it was like, oh, it's this relationship again. The same pattern kept repeating itself. So, just like everybody else, I started with the sun sign astrology. I'm an Aries, so I would look at an Aries and, well, who are Aries compatible with? And, and I joke and I say, by the time I was done with my research, I had pretty much dated the entire zodiac and my relationships still weren't working out. So I was like, it's got to be something else. It can't just be this sun sign dating thing. It's not working for me. So yeah, I was probably on the 10th sign by that point. I'm like, okay. So I said, let me take a different approach. But ultimately what ended up happening is, because of that one more failed relationship, which literally just brought me to a breaking point. I mean, I just couldn't take it anymore. And that started me with a few things that happened after that on this inner journey. I started learning about healing and, self-discovery and spirituality. And I learned that there's this thing called a birth chart. That's not just about your sun sign. And I became fascinated with, like, well, what does this birth chart have to say about me? But I started studying astrology on my own from that time till about 33. Mm-hmm. When I hit 33, I had a girlfriend of mine invite me over to some like meetup or group or something, and they were talking about astrology charts, and I was just completely like floored by the whole thing. The guy was like drawing the charts on the whiteboard, and we met at somebody's house and we're sitting in their living room. There's about 20 people there, and I just didn't want to leave. I kept asking him questions at the end, well, how does this work and how does that work? And I was like stunned that we have this whole chart that gives us a map of our life. And I asked, can I come next week? Can I come to the next one? I really want to keep learning. And it was like an hour and a half drive. And he's like, well, yeah, you can come to the next one. He says, however, we're doing naked yoga. So I don't know if you want to attend. I don't know if you want to attend that one. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that's a way to get people.
Yeah. And then he said, and after that, I'm moving to Miami. I was like, oh, okay, no problem. So here it like woke up this thing in me that like, oh my God, I finally had some kind of tool that was going to give me some answers, right? Like I had been on a wild goose chase trying to figure all this stuff out. And I finally found a system that actually could provide some of these answers. So from that point on, I was determined to find an astrologer. I found one. She lived 2.5 hours away from me. I booked a 2-hour session, drove the time to meet her, had the session, came back, barely remember the drive home, because the things that she shared with me that were in my astrology chart blew my mind. I literally felt like, I'm like, this is weird. It's like somebody followed me around and they know what I've been dealing with, what I've been going through. But also what was interesting is
watching me.
Yeah, someone's watching me. And what was also interesting is she was sharing with me how there were things that were still going to unfold. And the way she explained it to me is that they're like time released events in your life. And I was like, huh. At the time I was 33, right? And I'm like, time released events. She's like, like medication, time release. I said, yeah. She said, there's time released events. She says, but if you know what these time released events are about, or at least the theme of them, then you can kind of get ahead of it and you can start preparing for some of these shifts and changes that are going to happen whether you want them to or not. And I became very fascinated by that whole, because at the time I was like a control freak. I'm like, ooh, if I could control my future.
If I could control that.
But if I could control that, wow, I got the keys to stuff. But it wasn't even about that. It was more about preparation, right? Like, well, how do I prepare myself? What do I need to do? What do I need to work on? Because self-discovery is a rabbit hole in itself. You're going to go into all kinds of directions. I tried so many things. That's for a whole other podcast episode. And what I found is that the thing that I kept coming back to was astrology, because astrology was not only helping me make sense of my past, it was helping me make sense of my present, and it was helping me make sense of what was coming down the road that I could prepare for. And so the rest is history. I infused that in my life coaching business, and eventually started coaching other women around this stuff. So that's how I ended up here.
That is amazing. Why didn't I have a friend like yours?
What's
That
funny
is
is I
amazing.
introduced her to astrology, then she took me to the event, right? So it was
Oh,
it was
oh
perfect.
wow.
Yeah, we
Oh,
would like look at our sun signs, and she was trying to help me
okay.
find a man. The rest
Okay.
was history, and I I just have never stopped. I've never stopped studying astrology. I've never stopped working with astrology. I started um asking some of my coaching clients at the time, hey, I've been learning astrology, and we have this birth chart, and if you're open, I could share some things. And they were like, yes, tell me, like, what do you see in
Wow.
there? And it just became this tool that I just could not stop learning about, and the layers, and there's so much depth, and I've been studying for years. I mean,
Yeah.
years. um
Yeah.
and what, since 2006 maybe. And
Mhm.
I just still, to this day, there's still things that I learned about my chart, about my clients'
Wow.
charts. And no chart is the same, so I
Mm.
never get bored
Yeah.
looking at people's
That's
astrology
awesome.
charts.
That is amazing. So
Yeah,
prior to getting into astrology, you were already coaching.
I was already, well, I had just recently started coaching. I had finished my
Mhm.
life coaching. It was life awareness coaching
Mm.
certification.
Mhm.
And oddly enough, my teacher was a Virgo, the one who trained me, right? She certified me. My astrology teacher ended up being a Virgo. And
Mhm.
my teacher who trained me in hypnotherapy ended up being a Virgo. Well, guess what? I have Virgo on my 10th house of my
Um,
career.
oh.
It's the area that of the things I'm here to share with others. And
Mhm.
I'm like, well, how coincidental is that?
Isn't
Three
that
Virgos train me,
interesting?
and it's all directly with the work that I'm
Yeah.
here to do in the world, right?
That's just amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so what are then some of the things that women can learn about themselves from having an astrology session with you?
Well, I thought about that question, and I realized that there was so many directions I could go in. But since we are talking about navigating midlife with astrology,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think I sent you the empowering your midlife journey with planetary cycles, right? I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm a teacher at heart. I'm a teacher. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm coaching, I'm
Yeah.
teaching. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick 4 specific things that are going on during midlife, right?
Okay, perfect.
Because whether you're here yet or you're on your way to these particular ages, it kind of gives you a bit of an understanding of what's coming, right? Or what you
Mhm.
might be experiencing at the moment. So I wrote a couple little notes here because I like to make sure I don't miss anything.
Yeah, awesome.
But I was I was writing something about the midlife transits serve to pull you off any hamster wheel that you've gotten yourself on unwittingly, and reflect on your fears, your dreams, your vision, and your foundation. As challenging as it may be at times, there are astrological checkpoints that you can experience, and they serve as a passport to your next, even more fulfilling chapter. And basically, what that means is these are checkpoints, and they are time release checkpoints that come up on our
Mm-hmm.
journey. And if
Mm-hmm.
we would just take a little time to, number one, identify what they are and learn a little bit about them, then either A, you can understand what you're going through, or B, you can start to prepare for what's coming down the road.
Mm.
So
Okay.
the four midlife transits that I want to talk about, one
Mm.
of them is your Pluto square. It's called a Pluto square, and it happens between age 37 to 43. 37 to 43, so everybody's a little bit different.
37 to 43.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Pluto
There's
transit.
the Uranus opposition, and that is age 40 to 42.
Okay.
And basically what that means is Pluto in the sky and Pluto in your birth chart are making what's called a square, right? That's all
Okay.
that the Pluto square is. The Uranus opposition is when Uranus in the sky and Uranus in your chart are opposing one another. They're right
Okay.
across from each other. And that's age 40 to 42.
Okay.
Then you have your Saturn opposition. Again, Saturn in the sky is opposite from the Saturn in the chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's age 42 to 44.
Okay.
So you'll see some of these overlap, why some of these years could be pretty
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes.
and
That
then
40.
yeah, and then the main one for the midlife is the Chiron return. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners will have heard of Chiron or the
Mhm.
Chiron return. And
Mhm.
that happens from age 48 to 50.
Okay.
Now,
Man.
the reason these are significant, so if you think that life starts to get kind of like serious after 35, 36, 37, I remember specifically from 37 to 30, 38, I was like, what the hell's happening here? Like,
Mhm.
what is going on? I mean, things were blowing up in my life. I was also becoming very aware of things. I was having some major
Yes.
breakthroughs. I was healing. Like, it was all happening simultaneously.
Yes. Same.
And it's also around the time that I started getting very serious about the work that I was doing. I was already coaching people and working with people, but it like took it up to a whole other level. Every time I went through one of these, checkpoints, right? Every time I went through
Mhm.
one of them, I came out on the other end like, whoa, like understanding things that I never understood
Mhm.
before in that way, in that depth. And it,
Mhm.
it it really brought a lot of value to my sessions because I was able to kind of meet people in places that they hadn't been met before.
Yeah.
So let me talk a little bit about what each one is
Yes, please.
so you
Let's
get an
do
idea.
that. This is
Okay.
really
Now,
interesting.
none of this is meant to scare anybody or freak anybody out. It's just that in case you ladies haven't noticed, we're having to do a lot of healing. We're having to do a lot of growing, evolving, deconditioning, releasing, you know, all the things, right? And
Mhm.
there's really, if somebody's on a journey of awakening or personal development or self-reflection, there's no getting away without having to do some of this inner work, right? people
Mhm.
who people
Mhm.
who don't embark on this journey of self-discovery, I mean, God bless them. Maybe they just go through life and they never
Right.
even self-reflect. They don't know what the
Right.
hell's going on.
Isn't
They're
that like
making money, they got a great relationship, like wonderful. Like that's not the path I ended up on. I
right?
said I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, I wanted to heal, and then it
I
was like,
mean,
oh, here you
does
go.
does that happen though? Like, is that possible? Is that really a reality that there are some people that just kind of go through it kind of easy?
I'll tell you my opinion on it, and it's only
Okay.
my opinion through you know the life that I've lived so far. From my understanding, from a spiritual perspective, because I don't just do traditional astrology. What I practice is something called evolutionary astrology or spiritual astrology. And
Mm-hmm.
evolutionary astrology is way, way deeper than your sun sign and your moon sign and your personality. It goes beyond your personality. It goes into what is this soul's journey in this lifetime? What are they here to learn? How are they here to evolve? What are they here to heal? Who are they here to help? How are they here to help people? It gets into some very deep waters, right? I always joke and say, women usually make it to me by the time that they're ready to move past all the superficial stuff. They want to get into the deeper stuff. They're like, give it to me straight. I'm ready to deep dive. I don't want to try and figure this out anymore.
Mm.
So with that type of astrology, what I realized, I said, well, if this is going on in everybody's chart, then why do I have other friends who are my age and
Right.
they have not gone through any of this? I have
Right.
like
That's
four
that's
friends
what
that
I'm
I grew up with.
thinking. That's
None
what
of this.
I'm thinking. It's like it doesn't seem like we're all going through the same stuff.
I would sound like a crazy person if I even shared half the stuff that I've been through, experienced, what I worked through, all of that. I'm like, how is it possible? And then from a spiritual perspective, I learned that we all have this birth chart and not everybody signed up in this lifetime to grow and evolve and to wake up. Think about it. If every single person was doing the same thing,
Mm.
there'd be no resistance, there'd be no friction, there'd
Right.
be no opposition, everything would just be smooth sailing. I don't know how much we'd evolve at that point. But
Mhm.
here you have people who are playing their roles in life,
Right.
right? Even in your
Mhm.
relationships, you have soul contracts with people. And a soul contract is where two souls meet up for whatever reason, whatever purpose, and the idea is to help each other evolve. But
Mm.
there's other people in our lives and friends and just people we know, acquaintances, that we're like, how are they getting it through life without having to go through any of this? And the
Right.
reality is it it doesn't really matter what's going on with them. Maybe they're fulfilling their fullest potential here in the physical world, but what's going on in the inner world, right?
Mhm.
Perhaps they have a chart that is not time released for them to wake up until much later. or maybe not at all, because maybe they already did in a previous lifetime. Who knows? We don't know what anybody's path is. But what I do know is that those of us who seem to have a steeper climb up the mountain, we seem to have a more difficult path. We seem to be the people who raised our hand and said, I'm going to show up and I'm going to heal my stuff and I'm going to deal with all my things. I'm going to fulfill my potential and activate my purpose. And I'm going to help others. I'm going to be some kind of way shower and help other people who are going through some of these things. And not everybody is designed to do that.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
In this lifetime.
This lifetime.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, what the hell did I do in the last lifetime? Because I've had a pretty rough road.
Right.
You know? But does that resonate?
Like, boy, I'm really paying for it now.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that it took me out of understanding myself at this level between this and human design. And I know that's another show, but between using these two systems, I think this is what has helped me to learn how to love myself, to accept myself, to be able to see my own shadow qualities without the need to judge myself, make myself bad or feel guilty or ashamed of it, right? It's also allowed me to step fully into, or more fully into, my potential and my purpose in this lifetime, and to step up and be willing to help other people who are on this path and they're just like, I'm feeling a little lost. I need some direction. I need some guidance. I don't necessarily feel connected to my old life. I know there's some new stuff coming, but I'm not sure what that's going to look like. So I'm right here in the middle. I'm just here in the middle, right?
Yeah, I
midlife.
have to say that,
Midlife.
Yes, in midlife. Yeah, I mean, I have to say that when I was introduced to astrology through you and not through like reading my horoscope, and human design, that is truly when I really started getting to know myself, because then it was there was a sense of forgiveness almost for like, it's okay. Like, this is okay that we're all different, because our charts are different, you know, where I feel like many times, especially in the school system, we are, you know, kind of made to think that we should all be the same, right? We should all be striving to go to college and get the good grades and do the things, the extracurricular activities and all that stuff. And we're all taught to just do things one way. And so it's hard not to compare yourself when they're constantly comparing you to each other.
Right.
And so through astrology and human design is really, truly what I feel has been my saving grace in terms of getting to know myself, accepting myself, and then starting to restructure my business around all that stuff that you have helped me with. But let's go.
Yeah,
let's go on.
That's another show.
That's another
we
show.
could really go down the rabbit hole with this. Yeah. So I'll just say this one last thing, and then I'll get into these 4 time release periods of your life. Astrology really does allow you. It's a framework. Think of it as a framework, right? Like you can just go, oh, okay, I'm on a self-discovery journey and I'm on a healing journey and I'm wanting to know more about myself and my shadows and my unconscious beliefs and all this stuff. But astrology gives you a literal framework. It's like, here's work on this section, then move to this section of your life, then move to this section of your life. And now what's happening is progressively you're moving through your entire chart and you're learning about yourself. You're understanding yourself. You're restructuring your values, because you're like, oh, those weren't even my values before. That was somebody else's values. This is a lot of conditioning. This is what I really want. This is who I really am. And ultimately what it does is it gives you the ability to give yourself permission to be who you really are. To truly give yourself permission to be who you really are, which also means that once you do that, you lose the desire for outside approval. You lose the desire for outside approval or acceptance or any of those things that we've been taught that we need, right? And that to me is so liberating, so
100%.
empowering. So empowering.
Yes, 100%. I can attest to that for sure.
Yeah. So we'll start with the person I was talking about, which is the Pluto square, age 37 to 43. So Pluto is the planet of rebirth, regeneration, power, death, and transformation. And it doesn't mean a literal death. It's more like a death of an old way of doing things, right? And transformation. It takes 248 years to complete one full cycle around the sun, meaning going all the way around your chart, it takes 248 years. So it moves very slowly. Pluto is a very slow transformation for all of us. We all have Pluto somewhere in our chart that's going on right now. So we experience a midlife transit stemming from transiting Pluto. So as Pluto's moving around, like I said, it makes a square with the Pluto in your chart. So once that happens, you're now about 37 to 43, depending on what, when it happens in your chart, because it's different from everybody. It's about your shadow self. It's about how we give away our power, how we reclaim our power, how we stand in our power. It nudges us to reflect on issues of control. Oh, that's a big one.
Wow.
Issues of control, and re-examine our fears and the narratives that are holding us back. It's a moment in which you might have to let go of. In other words, experiencing a figurative death. It's not a real one, but symbolic, right? Let go of psychological crutches that have been preventing you from moving forward. That's a big deal. This is why when I was about 37, 38, I'm like, I think I need to go back to therapy. I don't know what's going on here. This is like really intense. Things were bubbling up to the surface in me that I hadn't thought about in years. There was a lot of issues with me trying to control the outcome of things, wanting to force things, to make things happen. Things weren't flowing. And I was like, what in the world? Like, what is going on? And we tend to think, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
My life doesn't seem to be flowing. It's not working as well, right? What am I doing wrong? And it's not about anything that we're doing wrong. But if these transits, if these events are designed to get us off the hamster wheel, because if you're on a hamster wheel, there's not a whole lot of evolving going on. You're just doing the same thing over and over, day in, day out. Nothing changes, nothing grows, nothing evolves. So here comes the Pluto square. It's a period of time, 37 to 43, and you're like, okay, it's time for me to re-examine some of these things in my life. And we start to hopefully be willing, right, to look at these things. But
So this is when that period starts. It doesn't necessarily mean that it gets accomplished, right? In that time period. Does that
right? It's kind of like a bookend, right? Like it kind of starts here, and then there's no hard or there's no hard start or stop, but it's kind of like here's the couple of years. Now, when I look at somebody's individual chart, I can see exactly how long it's lasting. The dates down to the date, right? But not when it's obviously we're talking about everybody. So it's about truly taking a microscope to negative patterns and ways of thinking that are holding you back and need to fall away in order for you to realize your full potential. So if we don't stop and take a look at these things, we don't realize our full potential. There's so much more that we're capable of. There's so many things that we're here to experience outside of, being a mom, outside of being a wife, outside of being a daughter or a sister or a best friend. There's our own personal potential that we're here to fulfill. And if we don't stop because, these time released events start to happen or to unfold, and sometimes they're inner events. It doesn't mean like your husband has to leave you or your wife leaves you or you lose your job. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means there's something internally that gets you to start wanting to look a little bit deeper into some of these things. And this also might be when people start, or women that I know start to become open to things like energy healing and getting their chakras balanced and getting an astrology chart reading and all the things, right? Maybe doing ayahuasca ceremony. Like there's some things going on that you're like, you know what? I need to open this up a little bit. I need to see what's going on here. And thank God that there's enough people who are willing to do it, that you can find a group and go work with them. Imagine in our parents' time, nobody was talking about this stuff. Right. Nobody was talking about healing this stuff. So, and if you did, something was wrong with you.
It seems like it's a lot more mainstream now. Like it's okay to kind of okay. I mean, you can talk about it and kind of gauge people's like, okay, I'm not gonna say that anymore. Or you open up, you see like their eyes kind of like light bright.
Like, oh, okay. You're like, oh, you're one of those. Yes, I am one of those. All right.
Okay, that's
All right.
interesting.
So that's the Pluto square. Okay. So
Okay.
if you think back, Sonia, to age
Mhm.
37, 43,
Yeah.
your mind probably later on, you'll start thinking like, what was going on during this time? You're going to remember. I
Yeah.
have journals. I've been writing journals for years. So all I got to do is go back and go, which book was that? Oh
I
yeah. I remember what the hell was going on back
I
then.
didn't keep journals in that time period. I know it was happening in my life for
Yes.
sure. So I'm interested to see what the others,
Oh yeah. Oh
were
yeah.
are and see how that Pluto one transit
Absolutely.
plays into like the rest of them.
Yeah.
So,
So then we have the Uranus opposition.
mhm,
Uranus is basically when the Uranus in your chart is opposing the Uranus in the sky. And this
mhm,
is from about age 40 to 42. So Uranus is the planet of change, rebellion, the future, and breakthroughs. And it takes about 84 years to go all the way around your chart. So it's also another slow moving planet, but not as slow as Pluto.
mhm,
And at the halfway point is about age 40 to 42, starting at that age. So the vibe of this transit is often what we tend to associate with a midlife crisis, the desire to ditch the status quo and
mhm,
overhaul huge aspects of our lives out of
mm.
the blue and out and on a whim. So
Oh
a
my
lot of
God.
times, men get accused of having, oh, he's having a midlife crisis. Oh, he turned in his truck
Yeah.
and he bought himself a
Or
sports
a
car or
sports
whatever.
car.
But
Typical.
right, but men are not the only ones who go through this.
Yeah. Oh
We
yeah.
all go through this.
Mhm.
So it's marked
Yeah.
by a feeling of restlessness. It's like a very deep inner restlessness that could inspire you to completely change career paths, end a
Mhm.
marriage, move across the country, or throw your credit card down on the splurge purchase because hey, you only live once and I'm gonna just live my life. Right?
Mhm.
So these are the things
Wow.
that can happen. It's about exploring your need for more authenticity. It's
Wow.
about freedom, inner freedom, outer freedom. It's about your individuality. It's about your voice, your authentic expression. And
Mm.
all of it is just one big effort again to get clear on your path, your purpose, and your positive growth journey. But
Mhm.
if you don't understand what's going on, it just feels like you just want to throw everything out the window and start all
Yeah.
over. Some people
Yeah.
have described it as wanting to run away from their life and go start a
Yeah.
new one.
And I did. And not in the greatest way either.
I was trying to think of what I did at that age.
Oh.
What did I do at that age? Oh, it's crazy because I was actually in a relationship at that time.
Mhm.
And it was a relationship that was so out of alignment with me. And what
Yeah,
was
mine
happening
too.
is the longer that I stayed in it, the more depressed I was becoming.
Mhm.
And the more disconnected from myself and who I was. And I just remember wanting to break out of it so bad that I did. I ended a 5-year relationship from one day to the next. Like one, and
Wow.
it was a little strategic how I did it, but from one day to the next, that was it. I was gone. Person never heard from me again. Didn't know where to find me.
Wow.
Nothing. Changed my phone number. Never looked back.
Wow.
So
Okay. So for me, I got into a relationship.
mm,
It was kind of like escaping like the existing life
yeah,
that I had and
yeah,
escaping the career and escaping like completely changed, uprooted
yeah.
my kids from my city, moved to a completely different city
Do you see my point?
with this man and completely different life. And mind you, it was the wrong man, but at that point I guess this explains why. It was
You
just like
almost
I
you
just
almost
needed
can't
to like
help yourself.
change.
Like, yeah, and that's really where it comes from. There's this. It's almost like your higher self, your soul is saying, "Listen, you didn't sign up to just do what you're doing right now. You didn't sign up in this
Mm,
lifetime just for this. There are some things you're here to do. There's some things you're here to shake up. There's some things you're here to start, to begin. There's some things you're supposed to release." And you start to almost feel stifled by your day-to-day routine. Now,
mhm.
granted, you may still be in a happy marriage, you may still love certain aspects of your life, but there's something else going inside that's like, there's something else more that I
Mhm.
need, but I don't know what it is. So it just feels like this
Mhm.
inner restlessness, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And
And
so, oh, go ahead.
so I guess I'm curious to see then how, like, again, like how the rest of the transits yes, the transits play, because even though that was the wrong person for me, what came out of that, whew, was that's when the true work came in. So it's,
Exactly. Because it has
yeah,
you needed a catalyst for the
yes.
change. You
Oh
needed a
boy. Yep.
catalyst to get you into that deeper place,
Oh yeah.
right? Time
Yes.
released. That's why
Yeah.
even that relationship that I was in that was not good for me, ultimately it brought up every single unhealed,
Mhm.
unresolved trauma,
Yes.
drama from childhood, everything that
Right.
I had no choice but to dive so deeply into my healing after that. Again, because this was like
Right.
another round of healing. Um, that what came out of that is I actually started learning how to heal my inner child
Yes.
at that point. Up until that point,
Same.
I had heard of it, but I didn't know how to do it,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's when truly I was like, okay, I need something
Because
different
this isn't
out
working
of
for me.
this world, out of the
Yes.
3D. And that's when
Yes.
I started diving into my healing journey. And
Yes.
when all the boxes started opening up,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and at
Absolutely.
every level. Yeah.
All right. So next we have we have two more. Your Saturn opposition, which is 43 to 44, roughly. When Saturn in the sky and Saturn in your chart oppose one another, they're opposite at that time. So, Saturn is a planet of restrictions, boundaries, limitations, and commitment, and it takes roughly about 30 years to move around your chart. And around 43 to 44, it is opposite from one another. So think of this as your midlife wake up call or your reality check in which you'll
Mm-hmm.
see life as it truly is versus how you once imagined it would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
So when you hit about 43, 44, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that this would be a lot different. This is not how it looked in my mind when I set out on this journey, right? 44, 43, 44. I was like, again? Like, I thought I was already on the path I needed to be. And it was just a lot for me, it was a lot of refining, like refinement. Like, I got to just keep refining this path, tweaking it, reassessing it, letting some things go, adding some things. It wasn't like you throw your whole life away and you blow
Mm-hmm.
it all up and start over again. This is not about starting over and over and over. This is about being willing to go into some of the deeper aspects that are
Mm-hmm.
now being time released. Thank God they didn't all get released at the same time. I don't know if any of us would make it past 38 if it got released all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
Yeah.
resonate? You're going to say something.
Yeah. No, no, definitely. I'm thinking. I'm in deep thought. I guess I'm thinking, yes, that's kind of when I reevaluated what I had done just a couple of years earlier. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold
Whoops.
up.
I may have taken a
Whoops.
detour here. Yeah.
But yeah, it's, yeah, for sure. And I guess I love the way that you put it for you. You're like, oh, this is when I'm refining, and I'm, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, that it sounds so beautiful, but I almost feel that because you had that understanding of astrology, that you had the ability to see it that way, right? Like, oh, I'm going to refine and I'm going to tweak and do things here and there. For me, I guess for me, I felt like, okay, I'm gonna heal and I'm gonna do my work, and then
Yeah.
my partner's gonna follow along.
Yeah.
And that was not.
It may sound that way, but I'll tell you how it really showed up for me. Because I had some of this understanding, because I had this knowledge, it pushed me into very deep isolation.
Mm,
Very, very, very deep isolation. I might as well have been on a mountaintop in a cave by myself for years because honestly, for the past, I'd say decade, I most of my time has been spent in isolation. Most of it has been spent by myself, with myself, in isolation. What I mean by that, but it was self-imposed isolation.
mhm,
I felt like, you know what? And it also because of what's in my human design chart, right? I have something called a hermit line number 2 in my profile. And so, and I'm a line 6. So those two things combined, in this lifetime, I was designed to be in a lot of alone time,
mhm,
a lot
mhm,
of self-reflection. So a lot of it was like very lonely,
mhm,
very, very lonely, very painful much of the time. really processing my emotions, really diving deep into the stuff, sometimes just wanting to completely disconnect from everything. And all while I was still running a business. You know,
Mhm.
like my business was my lifeline. Like my
Yeah.
sessions with my clients was like my lifeline to the outer world, because other
Right.
than that, I stopped going hanging out with friends. I stopped going to anything. I didn't care about anything except healing and getting better. But it took me so far deep into myself that I'm sure at times it was probably not healthy. I'm sure at
Yeah.
times some of my family members were like, "Hey, you gonna come out at some point?" And no, I did not
Uh-huh.
want to do anything except
Mm.
my inner work, because I was like, I already understand these cycles and how long they last. And I was trying to like do the most I could during those times, because I
Mhm.
knew that once I hit 50 and over, it was game on. I didn't have the luxury of being in there dealing with all this stuff anymore. Now I needed to show up. I'm going to need to show up
Yeah.
and help others.
Wow.
So
Okay.
is even though it
Yeah.
sounds, and there was breakups and moving around, and financial insecurities and all kinds of stuff that I went through, health issues, like you name it, I went through all of it. But again, I did it in very I was very isolated in how I dealt with some of these things. And it was not so easy. I've been with my boyfriend now for 7 years, and poor guy, he got together with me. And about a year later, I went into another one of these, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how to explain this. Like, I hope you have some thick skin, and I hope you can deal with some stuff, because some of this is going to look messy. And thank God I attracted a man who made it so normal and safe for me to express my emotions and to feel and to heal and
Mm.
to all these things. So that's a
Awesome.
whole other
Yeah.
topic. But
Yeah.
the fact that I even attracted somebody like that was
Yeah, that's
testament to the
awesome.
work I had been doing, right?
Yeah, no,
So
yeah.
all right. So back to so while it may sound kind of bleak, Saturn rewards effort. So if you've been doing the work required of you by the previous midlife transits, then this one could feel like you finally getting the recognition you deserve for accepting change and putting your nose to the grindstone and doing what needs to be done. Saturn also is also about foundations. So this can be a moment in which you really are laying the groundwork for the coming decades, perhaps buying a house, finding that you're in flow with a healthier lifestyle, or getting married, possibly for the second time. So these are things that could be happening when somebody hits that 43, 44,
Mm.
right? Okay. And then last but not least, the grand finale, Chiron return. Chiron return starts at about age 48. Some people will feel it even earlier, 47, but it's usually about 48 to 50. By the time you hit 51, you're like on the other side of all these back-to-back transits that you've been dealing with
Hmm.
for a little bit over a decade. And that's when you look back at your life and go, wow, that's been interesting. Like, look at
Yeah.
all the things that I've learned. Look at what I've healed. Look at how far I've come. Like, ooh, that was something else. But now imagine your life as you move forward without all the stuff you've been working on and working through. Some of
Mhm.
these things have been with us for lifetimes. You got to
Yeah.
remember. So we're taking a whole, what, decade, give or take, maybe 12 years
Mhm.
of our life that we're really having to get in there and work with this stuff. But
Yeah.
how many years did we have before that we didn't deal with this stuff? How many lifetimes did we have that we didn't deal with this stuff?
Yeah, I often feel like, uh, the way that I describe it about like raising my children is that I was kind of sleepwalking. It was just like just ticking off the boxes.
Yep.
Okay,
We all were, even if we didn't raise
got it.
children. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Checking off the boxes of what the things that I needed to do. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
college, bought the house, got married, had the kid. It was just like it was sleepwalking through what I was expected to do. And then once I like started waking up, it was like, hold on, wait a minute. It's like,
It's
what am
called
I
the
doing?
prescribed life, right?
Yes,
That was a
exactly.
prescribed life that somebody prescribed for you, and you said, "Oh, okay, yeah." Because
Mhm,
who
right.
doesn't want to fit in? Nobody
Yeah,
wants to be the
exactly.
outsider.
Exactly. And yeah, so it just felt like I had none of that knowledge.
Yeah,
I had none of that. I didn't wake up until I feel like late, but it sounds like it was right on time.
it is, because even though it took me all those years, I tell people I can teach you in 12 months what took me 12 years to learn.
Mhm.
right? Because I already went on the journey. And that is part of my purpose. I was supposed to go on the journey first. I was
Mhm.
supposed to make all the mistakes. I was supposed to gain the knowledge, the understanding, the wisdom. I was supposed to be able to teach it to other people so that their journey doesn't take them as long as it took me. But I was supposed to do that, right? That's
Mhm.
what I signed up for. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, no problem. I've always been
Yeah.
ambitious.
I'm
I've always
in.
been ambitious. It doesn't surprise me that I signed up for
Sign
it.
me up.
Sign me up. I'll do it, says the Aries. So we were supposed to blaze trails, right? I guess that's what I've been doing. So now when I work with the client, imagine what happens if I'm working with them for 12 months, even 90 days. The things they learn
Mhm.
about themselves in 90 days is just mind blowing. And you and I have done, we've been working together for a while now. Just the things you've learned about yourself,
Yeah.
has been helpful, as you said. But when I coach somebody for 90 days or 6 months, or those really brave souls who signed up for the 12-month program with me, by the
Woo.
time they come
It's
out of
a
there, they're not even the same person anymore. And they're not the same person because they're more of who they really are. They're more of who they really are at a soul
wow.
level, at an authentic level. They've been able to get rid of so many layers of conditioning and all the shoulds and the supposed tos and the prescribed life and everything. And when you move into this place of radical authenticity, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to piss a lot of people off. Not a
Mhm.
lot. You're going to piss off some people. And the
Yeah.
people who are going to be the most upset are going to be the people who benefit from you
Yes.
not stepping into your radical authenticity. And then you got to
Mhm.
ask yourself, well, why am I putting this person's opinion of me or this person's belief around what I should do or who I should be? Why am I putting that? Why am I prioritizing that over me, over my desires, over what I signed up for, over my soul contract? And when you start looking at it that way, you're like, oh, I can't do that anymore.
Mhm.
And I hope you understand these changes and not understand them, but I hope you're on board with these changes I'm going to make. And some of it's going to be different, some of it's going to look different. But if you really love me for who I am, you're going to be happy for me that I'm evolving and growing and becoming more of who I really am and who I was meant to be, and hopefully be inspired by it instead of trying to hold me back.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense. Do you think that when they're not inspired to quote unquote allow you the space and the freedom to make those that to create that growth that I mean that I forgot I lost my train of thought.
Like transformation.
Yeah, if they're not
If they're
in
not
the
on board.
if they're not on board,
Mhm.
what is what does that mean? I mean, to me, I felt like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my work and I'm gonna focus on me.
Right.
And then
Right.
to me, it felt like he was constantly trying to pull me back and like,
Yeah.
oh no, don't
Yeah.
grow. Don't that's how I literally felt like if I have a vision of him trying to hold me back.
Yeah.
And this is the second relationship that I felt
Yeah.
that way with that I felt like this tugging of like, you're not moving on and I had to like let it go,
Yeah.
the relationship so that I can continue growing.
When that happens, and all the listeners and all the viewers will take a look at the people in your life, because when something like this is so important for you and so like it needs to happen, like in order for you to truly be free in life, it needs to happen. If there are people that are holding you back, specifically if it's like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, even your spouse, sometimes it's your parents, like it's just different people, right? You get to a place where you have to ask yourself, am I willing, and this is a tough question, am I willing to sacrifice my personal destiny in this lifetime to manage the reaction of this other person?
Mhm.
That means you're taking responsibility for their reaction,
Yeah.
for their response, for their emotions, however it makes them feel, whatever it brings up. You're saying, I'm going to take responsibility for managing your emotions and your reactions to this.
Mhm.
And simultaneously, as I do that, I'm going to have to not reach my full potential in this lifetime. I'm going to have to sacrifice my own personal destiny. And maybe I'll be able to reach some of it, but I won't reach all of it, because that means I might upset somebody in my life or somebody might leave, or somebody might feel abandoned, or somebody might feel something. The bottom line is, if you're growing, evolving, healing, getting better, becoming a better person, that should enhance the relationships that you have.
Right.
That should make things better. But if
Mhm.
these particular people, whoever they are, I'm not saying like the hell with everybody, I'm just saying, but they have their own fears, they have their own glass ceiling, if you will, on consciousness. If you
Mhm.
allow their glass ceiling of consciousness to become yours,
Mhm.
then you have to ask yourself why.
Mhm.
What am I afraid of losing by allowing myself to heal and to grow and to evolve? What am I afraid of losing? Am I afraid of losing their love? Am I afraid of losing safety, security, connection,
Mhm.
belonging, a sense of belonging? What am I afraid of losing? Because at some point, they're either going to start to grow with you. At the very least, they'll move out of your way, let you do your thing, and be cheering from the sidelines, no matter how messy it gets. Or eventually, your vibrational frequency is going to increase so much that you will no longer be able to vibrate at the same level that you once were, which is what
Right.
attracted you. And
Right.
somehow it falls away. Either they fall away, or you fall away, or something happens that just is beyond anything
Yeah.
you can do anything about. Does that make sense? And I think that
Yeah.
scares people. I know, I mean, for me,
It
it
is
scared
scary.
me. I
Yeah.
was doing like the let me evolve over here, but let me keep this the same, right? Let me
Right.
work on this stuff, but I won't rock the boat over here. I did
Right.
all that, and it blew up
And
in my
that's hard.
face.
That's harder because now
Yeah,
you're trying to manage two different things. I've been there, and I did have to ask those questions. It's like, okay, hold on,
yeah,
like what am I doing here? And I had to ask those hard questions and just really, I feel like whatever source or whatever just
yeah,
kind of really played a role in you have to, like, you don't have a choice. It's like you have to evolve, you
yeah,
have to, like, next
yeah.
level. And it was like from one day to the next, like, done,
Yep.
and it's like, okay, let me pack up my stuff
Okay, I
and
guess
go.
we're moving again. So let me so let me
Okay.
let me end with this, because that was actually a wonderful segue into this last piece, which is the Chiron return from 48 to 50. Okay, think about this. If you didn't take the first transit serious, if you didn't take the second transit serious, if you didn't take the third transit serious, these time released events, okay, if you didn't take them serious, what do you think's going to happen by the time you hit 48 to 50?
Mhm.
Let me
Good.
tell you, you have
Gonna do it
rollover
again.
minutes. You have rollover minutes, rollover energy, okay? Now it's snowballed.
Oh,
Now you hit 48, 49, 50, and to the degree that you are off your path, and you have not allowed yourself to evolve, and you've not done any of the work, and you've refused to heal, and you refused to forgive, and you're still pissed off at your mother and your father, and you're still blaming people, and you're still not allowing yourself to release resentments and all these things, right? When you hit 48 to 50, we'll just say the pressure cooker gets turned way up. I
Mhm.
actually have a program that is specifically for the Chiron return people,
Oh, wow.
specifically for the Chiron return people, because women, I should say, because it is a time where if you have not been doing what you need to do for yourself, because again, managing everybody else's
Mhm.
feelings and emotions and outcomes and wanting to control the outcome of everything, if you haven't done it, it becomes you become increasingly aware of what's no longer working in your life,
Mhm.
and it cranks up pretty high. Okay, so
Mhm.
it takes Chiron about 50 years to return to the Chiron in your chart. That's why it's called a Chiron return. It's the wounded healer, and it wants you to see the results of your labor. What labor? Well, what you've been doing the past 10, 12 years, right? For decades over many Chiron transits through your chart, you have learned, cried, evolved, and powered through. And now, as Chiron reaches the culmination of this transit, it wants you to evaluate how much strength you've gained, where you've done the most healing, and how you can continue to expand, grow, and evolve. You may even be called to help others who are
Mhm.
now experiencing similar wounds, similar
Yeah.
traumas, similar whatever. That's why they call it the wounded healer. So you've been on this whole path. It's kind
Yeah.
of like being in school for those past 12 years, And now you hit graduation at about 51, because the dust has to settle a little. Now that doesn't mean, if you guys are listening to this, it doesn't mean everybody's life's going to get turned upside down from 48 to 50. If you have been completely off your path and you've done nothing to help yourself, well, you might feel it a little bit more than other people, but it can also be a time of celebration and liberation, because now when you hit 50, all those things you used to worry about, all the approval you needed, all the codependent relationships, all the not wanting to upset people and not wanting to go after what you really want in life because people aren't going to understand, they're going to think it's weird. You literally don't care. There's nothing more important to you by the time you hit 51 than living your most authentic life and self-expression, and being able to take what you've learned, specifically around whatever wounds that you've healed or overcome, and being of service to others who are just starting out on their journey or midway through their journey and they want to give up. And you can literally say, listen, it's basically, I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, but The Hero's Journey is basically, it's in a lot of movies, but you guys can look it up. There's a movie called Finding Joe. So I suggest you guys go watch that, find it. I think you can find it. I don't know, just Google it. Finding Joe. It's like a little mini movie.
Okay.
It explains the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is about how you start, which would be about probably 47, 48. You start on this journey. Like, you're not really going anywhere. You're kind of going within, right? But you're going and you're facing all these things. You're facing your fears, you're facing your shadows, you're facing opposition, you're dealing with loss, you're on this whole journey. And then you come back with this something that is like healing for other people. But you could not have activated that within yourself if you didn't go on that journey. You couldn't have done it.
Yeah, 100%.
Makes sense. So yeah, Finding Joe is a good movie.
Okay, I'm gonna link that in the show notes.
Yes.
So this totally makes sense. Everything you're saying. I mean, I am 51, so this is like this is right on target for me. It's like taking all of that I've been through.
Yeah.
And it's like
I'm making sense of it, right? Like really,
it's like so accurate. It's fascinating.
Yes. And I wanted to really quick before we get going, I wanted to you asked me if there was anything that I wanted to share with your audience, with your listeners.
Yes,
and
please.
So what I did is I actually created a specific link for your audience, and it's for a complimentary 20-minute mini midlife astrology session.
Oof, I love that.
Midlife astrology session, and we can look at anything you want in your chart, or we can talk about these 4 periods of time in your life so that you can kind of see, like, where am I? What am I in right now? Where is it happening? Because when I look at your astrology chart, I can tell you the exact area of your life that these things are going to be happening in. So you have a heads up on, like, what do I need to do to prepare for this? Or what can I start doing now in advance to start preparing so that now I get ahead of this and I just start going with it instead of waiting until a catalyst comes in and says, now you got to do your work. Yeah. Right? I don't want to get forced into it.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Monica. I'm telling you, they will be the best 20 minutes of your life. It will literally shift everything for you if you're ready for that. If it's really, truly been an amazing experience for me when I signed up for my 20-minute complimentary call way back when, and somebody program or something, I would not be here.
I think it was 2019. It had to be 2019.
It was 2019. It was in 2018. I was not in mental space for that. It was 2019. Yeah.
Awesome. This is why so many of my clients are, they'll book like their yearly birthday session with me every year, right? Year after year. I've been talking to them for years now, because they're like, what's coming up for the whole year? Because I just want to do my best and show up as my best self. And I just want to kind of see what's coming up so that I can prepare for it and I can really be present. So not about fortune telling. It's just about preparing for the
Mhm.
astrological weather, if you will, right?
Yep. And I love that. I love that when people say, how do you predict? And, psychics. And it's
Yeah.
not about that. It's
No.
about just kind of aligning yourself to make the right choices and be prepared for that. So, and that was definitely my experience. And I'm a
Yeah.
little sad I didn't discover this earlier, but you know what? Here we
But it was
are.
time released. You were supposed to experience it and learn about it when you did. That's the funny thing. You can't be late. You cannot be late with your own astrology. You can't, because these things are already there to happen to get you on your path if you haven't figured it out by then, right? So you're not late. You can't be late. There's just that there were other things going on that needed your attention, other parts of yourself that needed your attention. Some people need to learn just how to live in the real material world, right? The first 30, 40 years, they need to learn how to
Mhm.
literally buy a home, pay their
Seriously.
bills,
All the things.
all the
Yeah.
things. And then once their security, their foundation is laid and they're more secure and stable, then they can start on delving
Mhm.
into some of these other things. But trying to get them to go down looking at these things while they're still trying to create security can be very destabilizing. Very.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that kind of gives me permission to be okay with it.
Let it
So
go.
thank
Let it
you.
go.
Well, thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Monica. I appreciate it. Now, there's one thing I like to ask every guest at the very end is
Oh,
what is one
surprise.
thing, surprise,
Surprise.
surprise. What is one thing that you are loving right now? It could be a product, a movie, an app, a skincare product, like anything. What's something that you've been obsessing over?
One thing I'm loving. Are you talking about in life or like a thing? Or does it matter?
Anything. I guess it doesn't matter.
I think for me, it's probably a little bit broader. I think what I'm loving right now is my move to Las Vegas, Nevada. I have never lived anywhere other than California my whole life. And
Okay.
I literally, from one day to the next, I said, that's it. We're moving. We're going to Nevada. We
So
don't have
what
to
are
guess.
you loving about
We
it?
don't have to guess what transit I'm in. What I'm loving about it is that, well, in human design, there's something called your environment, right? Like there's a thing called your environment. So it's where you are designed to thrive the most in your
Mm,
environment. And I
mhm,
happen to know that my environment is very much aligned with here where I'm living, right? And what I love about it is the variety. There's so much variety. I can never get bored here. I don't even need to go to the strip. As a matter of fact, I really don't go to the strip unless we have family over or something. There's so many other things to do. And
mhm.
I'm just loving, like, it just feels like a restart, like a fresh new start. There's all kinds of things to try here, different things to get into. Literally never bored. That's a value of mine. I have very low tolerance for boredom. And what
Mhm.
I found is that when I'm living in places where there's not a lot of variety or I have to drive really far, that's the other thing. Everything's so close. I can get anywhere in like 20 minutes, right? When I have to drive really far and go to all these things, to me, it just kind of stresses me out a little bit. Like I just like the variety to be kind of close and have
Nearby.
options right nearby, have options. And
Yeah.
so for me, it just like it's just a friggin' adventure all the time. Like my boyfriend just got back home. He's been gone for a little while, taking care of his mom. And we're like, oh, okay, what's our next adventure? Like
I love
we're gonna
it.
go do some things. So just being able to just try new things, and there's so much novelty here and there's so many things to get into. And yeah, I love it. It completely changed my energy. And I realized that I'm not ready for like, we lived in a nice area, we lived in Rancho Cucamonga and in California, and it was so nice, and the trees and the mountains and everything. But I was like, I feel like I'm retired. Like this is too slow for me. Like I can't deal with this. I'm an Aries.
That's
I have like four
funny.
planets in Gemini. I'm like, I need something around here. And I started to just feel like I was literally retired or retiring. That's like the only energy that I can explain. And here, I
Interesting.
haven't felt like that not one day being here. And, I'm sure it's not always going to be like that, but though, guess what? They're going to keep building and creating new stuff
Yes.
here. So I don't think I'll get
That's
bored anytime soon.
interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what's crazy is I raised my kids in Rancho Cucamonga and I live in Riverside. So it's crazy that we never met
Right?
in
And I loved it. It was so peaceful. And I mean, I
Yeah.
loved it. But I was like,
Mhm.
I can't see myself here for like the next 10 years. Not right now. Not yet. Maybe I'll end up back there. Right?
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Monica. I
Thank you
appreciate
for having me.
I will yeah, this has gone a little bit longer, but I appreciate your time and I'm sure
Absolutely.
that people are going to love this episode. And I will link the complimentary session in the show
Hmm.
notes. Where else can people find you?
On Instagram, you can go to soul_empowered. Soul_empowered. That's probably the best way to connect with me. And then you guys can see everything I got going on there.
Perfect. I will link that as well.
And don't forget the Finding Joe. I think that's going to
And
be
Finding
really,
Joe. I've
really
got
good
that
for
right
people.
here as well.
Awesome.
I've got it all
All
written down.
right. Well, thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
wonderful
much,
day.
Monica. We will bring you back to talk about human design another day.
Anytime. Anytime.
Awesome. All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.